Hello, this is Rebecca, and in my last video I mentioned an idea of stringing beads on a string as a way to conceptualize the way that every day is passing, whether you like it or not. You're stringing some kind of activities onto your string of 24 hours. So different color beads represent different types of activities, and I explored that, and I explored the idea that some of my days I was stringing black beads onto my string, which represented wasted time, a void, just something that I have nothing to show for that hour. And when I started to see that, I realized this is part of the reason why I am so frazzled and harried and I don't have time for anything, and I've dropped everything. I don't do social activities. I don't go to coffee with friends. I've stopped calling my own mother. It's like I don't even talk to the people that I love and care about because I don't think that I have time. But where was the time going? Well, there was a lot of time going to these black beads where I was sitting down at my computer, I was working on my computer, I would get distracted, I would go off to do just one thing or just look this thing up for 5 minutes and then be off on the journey of the vortex of the internet, where you can just go into so many different ways to pass time that you'd have nothing to show for. And so here's one of the things that I have been implementing that made a lot of sense to me for how to get better results and better outcomes in my life where I was wasting time before. I obviously do not want to waste any time. I want to have 0 black beads ever in any day. I don't want wasted time. I want to use every single moment for the maximum effectiveness that I possibly can. So there's this book called Work the System, and I haven't even read this book. I've only read the preface of the book, but I found this book online. Somebody else had recommended it, and just reading the preface of this book or the cover, the book jacket and so forth, I was like, oh, I get it. And the concept of the book is this: if you're not getting the outcomes that you want to get in your life, there's systems and processes that you're following that you might not even be conscious of. It's like the underlying machinery. It's like the basement of the house. Underneath, it's all of the, the back end systems of your life. And if there is a gear broken in there, if there's, like one transmission valve that, is failing, then your whole thing is failing, but it's only 1% of all of the parts that's actually out of whack. And so I was like, oh my goodness, that is so brilliant. So I started just looking at all of the systems. So I started just incorporating, okay, if I ran into a hurdle, or if I ran into I just got off track there, or I didn't get the outcome that I wanted there, or that did not go well. Like, I'm a writer, so I have a task and I'm stuck on this task for, undeterminate amounts of time. And what was I doing when I was stuck on a task? Well, I was saying to myself, ugh, I'm stuck, so I'm just going to go off and read something until I feel unstuck. Okay, that's my system. My current system is, when you feel stuck, go off and read some article on the internet until you feel unstuck. But when does that happen, and how are you going to get unstuck, and what's going to magically make you feel unstuck? Nothing. So my outcome was very, very bad, because if I was waiting to feel magically unstuck by reading an article online, that's of course, what do I expect? That I'm just spending hours off track. So I started to sort of stop myself in my tracks and be like, okay, wait a minute. What is my current system? And I would write down my current procedures. Like, here's the steps that I'm following. Feel stuck. Go online. Spend an indeterminate amount of time online until I feel unstuck. Feel unstuck, then go back to work. Or feel like I've spent a long time online, go back to the task to see if I still feel stuck. Conclude that I do. Use that as an excuse to go back off track. What in the world? Okay, so my current system, there is some underlying machinery of my process that is not working at all. So I need a new process. Okay, so let me start a new process. What would be a good process? And so that's where I've been really starting to find some great ways to improve my outcomes by looking at the underlying process. And this is just a guess. So I just took a piece, beside that on the piece of paper and underneath of it, I just said, okay, well, what would be a better system? What would be a better process? What should I be following? And I'll just take a stab at it, but then I'll dial it in and dial it in and dial it in and tweak it and hone it and refine it and keep looking for what is the part that is broken, so that when I get stuck, I can get unstuck as quick as possible and move on, complete the task, get the task off my plate and on to the next thing, so that I'm not taking forever to complete these tasks. So another example is my work hours. In my last video I mentioned that, or in this one I recorded these both in a row. So, but my work hours, so if my 8-hour block is in the middle of the day, it was just working its way backwards to the midnight section of the day. So I was getting this nice 4-hour block of work in from 8 o'clock until midnight, but that was getting so tiring. That was just, I was just not doing well. I was just not sustainable in my health, in my exercise, in all of the parts of my life. That just wasn't working. So now it's just like, okay, I have to incur jet lag on myself to get myself back into working in the morning. But I also have to have a behavior of saying no to those things that I was saying yes to before, where it was just like, well, I have to do this one thing and I really, really need to do it. So I'm just going to do this one thing here and take this work hour block that I would have done now and I'll put it in the night. So I have to change that behavior. So how do I change that behavior? Well, what's my underlying system? I have a system and a process that I'm following whether I realize it or not. But if my system is chaotic and illogical and not helpful to yield an end, then that is not going to be useful and helpful. So one of the things that I have just now done, and I'm on my second day of it, is to create a morning routine. And my morning routine, obviously depends on my evening routine. So I've set up an evening routine that says stop work by 8:30 p.m. no matter what. And go to bed by 9 o'clock p.m. no matter what. And then my morning routine is get up by 6 o'clock a.m. And then I think this is going to be a crucial part of my system, and that is pop out of bed without hesitation. So I have a check mark for whether or not I did that in the process of adhering to my system. So I've really, really struggled all my life to use checklists, to-do lists, calendar blocking, any type of thing like that, because if I would do it, it didn't help. I just wouldn't adhere to it after that. I was like, what is it going to take to get the power, to have the leverage over myself, to actually make myself do the thing that I've defined for myself to do? And I've just never been able to figure that out in all of my years of being on Earth. And so I'm trying this again. I have not been successful at all with this kind of thing in the past, but I'm trying it again with the added nuance of this is my system. This is the underlying machinery. And if the machinery is out of whack, then the results and the outcomes that I'm going to get are going to be ones that I don't want. So what can I do to get the machinery into gear so that I put in the inputs and it spits out the outputs that I do want? And so I'll keep you posted, but if you have any ideas about this or any ways that you have tried this, especially if you're a productivity basket case, where you're a procrastinator, you're ADD, you're totally like ding, 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 and you're unconscious of time, because that's how I am. And so this is the attempt of somebody who is a productivity basket case to try to get her life into an order, stop the chaos, and have a life that moves forward in a meaningful and productive direction where I'm defining more of what I'm doing. I'm responding to the Lord and having the time to do what He wants me to be doing, because that's the end goal. I have some really, really sweet, dear to my heart projects that I feel like are the things that the Lord has given me to do. And by me being distracted and off course and chaotic in the way that I go about my work spreads out to occupy my entire day. And I'm trying to scrunch my work down into occupying only the 8-hour block of time that I need to, make a living, so that I have parts of my day that I can dedicate to these things that the Lord has given me to do, these visions and these dreams and these things that I am so hungry for. So I hope that this is an encouragement to someone else out there who is also in that same boat of, I don't know what it's going to take to get myself in order, and you can just follow along. I don't know if it's going to work, and if it does, great, and if it doesn't, we'll keep on trying things until we get something that works. And the Lord will be faithful, and we will trust Him. So that's the other thing that I have come to see. The key in this is faith. If I'm doubting, like I doubt that I can do this, I have my routine on my whiteboard right over there. But is my routine going to have any green check marks on it, or is it going to be mostly red X's? based on my track record before, it's going to be mostly red X's, and I'm going to just throw up my hands and be like, why do I even try? Okay, that's doubt. So what does faith look like? Faith looks like I presented myself to the Lord as a living sacrifice. I believe Him, that He is able to take me and use me and build me and cleanse me and make me holy and equip me to do His work. And whatever I need to build into my life to accomplish that end, He will enable me to do. So if I don't have that thing yet, but I'm asking the Lord for it, and I'm just presenting myself to Him and say, Lord, you work this in me, because I am pretty helpless and pretty useless when it comes down to me by myself. But you, with you, by your power and your grace, because of you, this can have a different outcome. So that is the approach that I'm taking. I'm taking an approach of faith. I believe the Lord. I don't have any confidence in myself, but I believe the Lord can make me have a different outcome than I've always had all up until this point. My previous track record is no indicator of my future track record if Christ is involved. If my previous track record was me working in the flesh, well, what do I expect? But if Christ is involved, if I'm yielded to Him, if I'm walking with Him, then that's the thing that makes the difference. That's what He's been trying to get me to see all along. That's what He wants all of us to get to see. He wants us to come to that point of surrender. So if you are surrendered, walk in faith. If you're not surrendered and you haven't walked in faith, walk in faith. Faith is that shield that quenches the fiery darts of the enemy. And what I was experiencing was the enemy was just shooting his fiery darts at my life so that every single little thing that I tried to do would be derailed. Traffic jam after traffic jam after traffic jam in front of the things that really made a difference. But I could have a green light and green light and green light for all those wasted hours. So what is that? That's the enemy strategically opposing the things that are God's work in my life. And I want God to have the final say. I want God's work to be accomplished. And how do I get that done? Faith. What is available to me? Faith. Faith is the only thing that is available to a helpless creature who has the enemy is more than a match for me. But faith is the one thing that he cannot take away from me. He cannot undo. He doesn't have any defense. He doesn't have any way to overcome that when I am walking in faith, trusting the Lord, walking in the Spirit. So if that encourages you, I'd love to hear about it. Just send me a note or write a comment or communicate, and let's start the conversation.